Well, the history of Nikken all depends on who's telling the story. And because I'm telling the story, I have to tell it from my point of view. Because it's one of those arenas where, there are those events in our lives that we really know ahead of time they're going to be a big event. But there's other times when we don't really know. It's later on we found out what a big event it really was. And that's what happened to me. I'd gone to the University of Wyoming and become an engineer with the General Electric Company. And I found out that I needed a little extra income. I'd been sent to the San Francisco Bay Area, and coming from a little town in Wyoming, I was like a kid in a candy store. There were things going on at that banquet table of life, is what I call it, that like ball games and concerts and restaurants I couldn't pronounce the names of. But the problem was, on my engineering salary, I couldn't sit up to the table, so to speak. I was having to settle for the scraps that fell on the floor. And about that time, a friend of mine invited me to look at a new concept that had just begun back then called network marketing. And after some deliberation and deciding whether I could do it or not, I got involved. And I found out in about 18 months I was earning more money part-time than I was full-time at my job at General Electric. And so another year and a half went by where I was gaining courage and skill, and I left and went full-time into that business opportunity. And because of that, my whole life changed. In fact, that company, the owner of that company believed that his most important product was people, and that the growth of people was what it was about. And the vehicle that he was using, the financial opportunity, was just to give them the freedom that they would need to grow. Well, I love that. In fact, he eventually made me one of the instructors of that company, and in about a year and a half later, we were the #1 distributors in the world in that company. And as a result of that, that company asked me to go to Japan to help set up their company in Japan and head up their marketing and sales. What happened was really interesting. I arrived, and I even hesitate to mention the dates because I'm not as old as I look, really, But what happened, I arrived in December of 1972. In March of 1973, I was doing interviews in a little town called Miyazaki, Japan. Well, in that interview in Miyazaki, Japan, in came a man by the name of Mr. Isamu Masuda. And Mr. Masuda had, in the same month that I had arrived, in December of the year previous, 72, he'd had a son born with a very serious physical problem. And he, at that time, was just a desk clerk in a bus barn. And he knew that if his son was going to have a normal life, it was going to require a lot of operations and a lot of medical care. And he needed to find a way to earn more income. He'd heard about this network marketing, so he flew down to Miyazaki from Fukuoka, Japan, and came into that interview. Well, he got involved, he got excited about the concept, just was an immediate success in that company. In fact, he was so successful, we asked him to become one of the trainers for that company, some of the training that I had been doing. And eventually, we asked him to become the vice president for Southern Japan in the field for that company. Well, the owner of the company was killed in a plane crash, and they changed their management. I left and started a management consulting company. Mr. Masuda left, and in March of 1975, started the company Nikken. And what he asked us to do was set up the training program for his new company, because what he wanted that company to be was a vehicle for people to be all that they can be. In fact, he started with a philosophy that was just tremendous. He was raised by a single mom, by the way. His dad had died as a result of the war. And she had evidently whispered to him nightly, probably, about how if he was going to have a peaceful, joyful life, he needed to have a life of balance. So here he was starting this new company, and he was going to have a chance to put into effect a philosophy that is now just such a key part of the company called balance in the 5 pillars of health: healthy mind, healthy body, healthy family relationships, contribution to society, and healthy finances. But his slogan was the key. It was a company about humans being more. He wanted his most important product to be clear that it was about the growth of people. That's how the company started. Well, things went along just amazingly. He found some people who believed what he believed and who banded with him. And in fact, in 4 years, he had just one product. They had come across these Japanese scientists who had been studied magnetic deficiency syndrome is what they called it, and the effects of the Earth's magnetic field being diminished. And they had come up with a prototype called mag steps today, with the little bumps to massage the feet with magnets in it. With that one product, they reached $1 billion in sales faster than any company in history up to that point. About a year and a half into that, I came back to the States and just occasionally did training programs for him. He'd send people over he wanted me to train, that kind of thing. And then in 1989, we finally convinced him to bring the company to North America. Up to that point, he resisted it, saying the Western world was not ready for that. The Western medicine, in order to be good health, you either had a knife, a shot, or a drug. And they weren't ready for this holistic approach. He's probably right. But in 1989, he decided it was time, and he selected as the person to head up his company in North America a good friend of his who was also raised by a single mom whose dad had died as a result of the war, exactly the same age, who had also been a key part of that original company, Mr. Tom Watanabe. And they asked me then to head up their training program in North America. And that was the result of it. Well, shortly thereafter, in 1990, he had his first international convention. He held his first convention in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We all went down there. It was a very exciting time, 2,500 excited people from around the world, most of them from Japan and Brazil. But as we were getting ready to leave, Mr. Masuda came up to me to say goodbye, and through a translator. All we have ever communicated through is a translator. He said, "Do you remember what you told me when you interviewed me in March of 1973 in Miyazaki, Japan?" And I didn't have a clue. I didn't even remember interviewing him, much less what I had said. And I said, "No, I don't remember." Well, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a little 3x5 card, showed it to me. It was all written in Japanese. I couldn't read a word of it. But at the bottom of it, it said, "El Prophet." And he said, "What you told me in that interview changed my life." Well, I'm feeling pretty good. You know, that's what would your mama say, you know, that kind of thing. And I was smart enough to ask the translator what it said. It said, "In order to become the person you wish to become, you must first think, talk, walk, and act as if you already are that person." Well, now I recognized it because that was something that I had learned from Earl Nightingale in his Lead the Field series. And I had been playing that for 9 years every single day. And evidently in that interview, something triggered that response. And he said it changed his life. Well, I realized from that moment on that it's important that you show up, that you be where you say you're going to be, because who knows what you're going to be able to do or say or be that will inspire somebody who can really change the world. And it's made such a big difference in my life. But it's also been an awesome kind of a responsibility because you recognize that there are no coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. And you recognize that because of his philosophy and wanting to help people be more of what they can be, that was a key point of his life. That's been an exciting thing for me in the history of Nikken.